Full disclosure, I don't like politicians. I think 99.9% of them suck. They occupy positions where they're highly susceptible to corruption. That doesn't mean that they're all bought and paid for, but it does mean that money in politics plays a role in tainting otherwise good people who may have started their careers with good intentions. So maybe we should do something about that. Tim Walz is one of the few politicians who actually seems like a real person to me. This is a man who served 24 years in the military, was a high school football coach, is a beloved father and a husband, implemented free breakfast and lunch for children in his state, signed 2 bills that covered college and university tuition costs for low-income students. He banned PFAS, which is the forever chemicals in the state of Minnesota. He's got a history of supporting the working class and labor movements and a bunch more policy that I really like. So given that he has a pretty decent policy record, what in the world could his detractors possibly target him for? I guess that's what they could target. They said he drinks the baby juice straight out the horse. I mean, I can't prove or deny this claim given that I still need to speak with the horse, but maybe the right is onto something here. We'll never know. Without further ado, here are 6 myths about Tim Walz debunked. Myth number 1. Tim Walz is guilty of stolen valor. So a little bit of context. Tim served for 24 years in the National Guard. He completed his required 20 years and then he re-enlisted after 9/11. He deployed in service of Operation Enduring Freedom and he was stationed in Italy training his constituents and supporting the war effort. Just to be clear here, troops who are sent to military bases in times of war are still aiding the war effort and are considered deployed. Keep that in mind. So fast forward to now. The Kamala Harris campaign released a video where Tim Walz is arguing for legislation surrounding firearms, and he makes this statement.
And we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Republican VP candidate J.D. Vance has taken to attack Walz for his choice of language here. Vance claims that since Walz never saw combat, he has no right to say he handled weapons in war. Vance actually goes as far as accusing Walz of stolen valor, which is a pretty terrible thing to be guilty of.
What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not.
But see, Walz never claimed to be a combat veteran. His saying that he deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and that he handled weapons in war is not inaccurate and is not stolen valor because he was deployed and he did handle weapons in his aiding of the war effort. Another common lie surrounding Walz's military record is that he abandoned his unit when they were to be deployed to Iraq.
What was this weapon that you carried into war given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq and he has not spent a day in a combat zone?
You know, Iraq, that war that both Vance and Trump and the majority of the population by now consider to be an unjust war. Tim didn't want to fight in that. That was a little bit reductive of me. The reality of the situation is that Walz's unit deployed to Iraq 10 months after he retired. He retired 2 months before his battalion was even alerted for mobilization to Iraq. It's also worth remembering that Walz already served 24 years at this point, which is 4 years more than what was required of him. He ultimately just wanted to retire and run for Congress and spread communism injected straight into the veins of America, but we'll get there. Myth number 2 is Tim Walz is pro-illegal immigration. This comes from a convenient edited clip of Tim seemingly saying that he plans to invest in a 30-foot ladder factory to spite Donald Trump's wall.
I always say, let me know how high it is. If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in the 30-foot ladder factory. That's not how you stop this.
Now, you tell me, why would such an apparently damning clip of Walz need to be clipped so short and clearly when he's in the middle of a sentence? Could it be because this segment in its entirety shows Tim joke about a hypothetical 30-foot ladder factory as a way of highlighting how useless Trump's wall is? Probably not. No, Tim is probably just a communist. He's actually Mao Zedong's son. Tim Zedong.
I always say, let me know how high it is. If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in the 30-foot ladder factory. That's not how you stop this. You stop this using electronics. You stop it using more border control agents. And you stop it by having a legal system that allows for that tradition of allowing folks to come here, just like my relatives did, to come here, be able to work and establish the American dream. He's not interested in that. He wants to demonize.
When the majority of undocumented immigrants get into the country by overstaying visas or applying for asylum, wouldn't it make more sense to fund asylum lawyers so these people can get their hearing sooner and not have to remain undocumented in the country waiting for years for a court date? Walz is just pointing out how stupid and useless the Trump wall is, especially when investments made in other areas would yield better results. If Tim Walz was genuinely looking to undermine the security of the immigration process and advocate for illegal immigration, why would he then go on to offer a bunch of solutions for illegal immigration? That's kind of counterproductive. On to myth number 3. Tim Walz changed the Minnesota flag to resemble the Somali flag.
He changed the Minnesota state flag to make it look like a Somali flag.
I'm trying to have like an air of like professionalism here. This is so stupid, dude. No, a 13-member commission was tasked with designing the new Minnesota flag after decades of criticism regarding the old state flag. The old state flag depicted what some say is a white settler plowing a field while an indigenous man rode on a horse in the background. This old design has been interpreted as though the settler came and stole the land he is now seen plowing, as the indigenous man is fleeing via horseback. If that's actually true, that's kind of a shit flag. Sorry. The commission tasked with replacing the flag included graphic designers, indigenous leaders, and other members of the community, but not Tim Walz.
How crazy is that the governor gets to change the flag? Like, who else is involved in that decision to change the flag?
Timothy was not a part of the commission tasked with redesigning the flag. The commission opened up to the public for suggestions and design submissions, which resulted in over 2,000 new flag designs. The winning submission was from a 24-year-old named Andrew Precker, who is obviously secretly a Somali agent. Myth number 4, Tim Walz is a socialist. From Alex Jones to Rush Limbaugh, calling milquetoast liberals communists and socialists is unfortunately part of the political landscape. In this tweet highlighting how Tim owns no stocks, bonds, or investments, Ben Shapiro is seen concluding that Tim's financial decisions offer us more insight into Tim's socialism. But this is putting the cart before the horse. How is Tim a socialist? I mean, I thought we were supposed to be wary of politicians who had too many stocks and bonds. Nancy Pelosi. How is Tim a socialist? Socialism is a political, social, and economic ideology that advocates for the seizure of the means of production by the working class and the decommodification of the market. Typically, there isn't much room for private interest under orthodox socialism. There are different strands and flavors of socialism that have popped up over the past century, such as democratic socialism, libertarian socialism, market socialism, anarcho-syndicalism, but unfortunately, it pains me to report that Governor Tim Walz does not fit into any of those aforementioned categories. No, he gets lambasted as a socialist because he believes silly radical things like investing in education and healthcare, free breakfast and lunch for students, and he has a history of being pro-worker. His implementation of sectoral bargaining for nurses was a nice touch in my opinion. Now, if you heard that list of programs and thought that they would be better described as Keynesian or social democracy programs, you would be right. Tim Walz does not advocate for socialism or communism. He advocates for similar social democracy programs that have been successfully implemented in other capitalist countries. When you invest in your education, healthcare, and workforce, the way that European social democracies do, the result is increased productivity due to a healthy and happy labor force, and believe it or not, a return on investment due to that healthy and happy labor force's ability to work, pay taxes, and generate wealth. So when Tim says things like,
one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness,
you're proving his point, because the programs he advocates for are social democracy programs intended to work within a capitalist framework, not socialism. You absolute buffoons. Myth number 5, Tim Walz is pro-outsourcing jobs to China.
This is a guy who's proposed shipping more manufacturing jobs to China.
I don't think I have to spend too much time on this one because it's very easy to disprove. No, Tim Walz has a history of voting against outsourcing deals. He voted against fast-track approval for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In stark contrast to this, Trump shipped 200,000 manufacturing jobs overseas, and I didn't hear a peep about it from the right. Myth number 6. Tim Walz shoved a tampon right in my son's ass. I am just kidding. It's Walz put tampons in the boys' restroom. Now this is kinda true, but the way it's framed is disingenuous. He signed a bill to put tampons in all public school restrooms. I guess the idea that a trans person might benefit from a bill that helps so many others is truly too far for some. Personally, I think period products should be free and supplied to anyone who needs them. I find it pretty insane that in some states there is still a tax on feminine hygiene products when products for men like Viagra and Rogan are considered medical products. Like Rogan, seriously, is preserving the hairline of balding dudes considered to be more essential than feminine hygiene products? And that's no shade to bald dudes. I'm an ally of the bald community. I might join your ranks one day. But there is no way that Rogaine should be considered a medical necessity while tampons aren't. Aside from the tampon tax, period poverty is a serious issue as well. I mean, there are people out there who have to decide between buying tampons or food. That's insane, dude. So if you're a young man from Minnesota and you happen to be listening to me right now, I want you to walk into one of those washrooms, grab as many tampons as you can, fill the freaking heck out of your pockets with them, and distribute them to the ladies. Bring some to your siblings, to your cousins, to your neighbors. Walk up to random people in the street and throw it. Don't actually do that. That's a stupid idea. But you know what I mean. Help a sister out. I think this is a good bill. Free period products for all menstruating students. If this bill helps out some trans kids, even better. Last thing I want to say is a lot of people are calling Tim a radical.
And they bring in this other guy who's radical from Minnesota.
The same people calling Tim a radical used to do the same thing to Bernie Sanders, even though he's one of the most popular senators in the country. Tim and Bernie are not radicals. They're not pushing a radical agenda. They're actually pushing very popular policies. Ironically, it's the people who are trying to convince you that these men are radicals that actually hold very unpopular positions.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally.
Keep in mind, these are some of the same people who were in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade. They're currently in favor of banning contraception and IVF. Those are radical positions, not what Tim is pushing for. All right, subscribe to Overzealous, the most famous YouTube channel in the world.